Hey guys, what's going on? It's Dan and I'm back again with Solanor aka Chad. How are you doing, Solanor aka Chad?
I'm all right. How about you, Dan?
I'm doing well myself, and we have our PDPL Week 2 recap going on. We definitely had an interesting week this week. Lots of cool Pokemon and cool matchups. The Illumise was a standout this week, but I'm sure when we get to that match, we will be discussing that. But anything you want to say from a pretty high level before we dive into the matches this week?
I don't know about from a high level, but why do we got the ghost of Flygon past like front and center here?
Uh,
It
I
looks
wanted I wanted to fit on one more Pokemon, but I didn't want to make it too messy, so I figured I'd just make it super see through.
that's funny. I'm ready whenever you are. Get into it.
Perfect. So our first match, we didn't actually get to see this one. It was Ollie who won 2-1 against Chaos Knight Rider. Not too much to say. We definitely still need Chaos Knight Rider's pace. Looking at Ollie's team, is there anything that really stands out as a cool tech besides the Ursaluna doing Ursaluna things the whole set?
I mean, I think the Hydrapple set is pretty cool. Yawn, Fickle Beam, just like making it Terra Poison, making it real bulky with survivability. I'm sure that was good in the set, but I don't know. We'll never know.
Yeah, maybe we'll see a video of this at some point. I imagine it looks like he's got two Trick Room setters and some redirection, so I imagine this was just a heavily Trick Room match, and Chaos Knight Rider probably was able to get around the Trick Room one match, and then Ollie had Trick Room the other two, and I think Ursaluna had some sort of insane line like 7-1 or something for kill death. So
I believe it.
that tells you basically all you need to know about that match. But into the matches we do have a video of. First up, we've got Squirrely versus Wakeman. You want to give us a little breakdown of this match?
Yeah, so Wakeman did himself pretty bad in this one. Not gonna front. We certainly got the appearance of a Thunderous using taunt into an oblivious Illumise, which was quite funny. And that game one actually ended up being really close. The came down to Thunderous not getting like its special attack dropped by Struggle Bug, and then just being able to like just not getting crit by it. So game one was pretty close, but yeah, game two I think is a pretty good performance from Squirrely. I really liked the Life Orb Manshao. It felt like it was putting in a ton of work. So just in general, Wakeman tried to go with his hyper offense mode, but it's a little hard to go hyper offense when you don't have the prankster speed control you're looking for. So
Yeah, I think Wakeman was still in game one after the Tailwind issues, but he just didn't really lean into it. I think he got a little tilted because no one was more shocked that Illumise was oblivious than Wakeman when it happened. And I
right.
think I think the tilt made him make a couple subpar plays in game one and game two, which left him with some difficulty. I think Squirrely had some pretty good techs this week. I like the 29 HP EVs on the Mienshao to make sure that it minimizes life orb damage. So if it gets off 2 attacks, it actually has more bulk with 29 EVs than with 31 EVs. And of course, the German Mienshao makes it stronger just inherently, just because of the way that it is. Uh,
Real.
but in general, yeah, you check your mons when you gen your Pokemon. It's pretty important to make sure that they're all correct. And then without the priority Sunny Day Encore Tailwind, Wakeman was just really going to struggle against a lot of the rain options that Squirrely had, and I think that ended up playing out to some extent. And then killing through the Registeel is always going to be a difficult task, even with an Urshifu, because if you Terra to resist the Wicked Blow, then you're going to be able to have a pretty bulky option there.
Yeah, definitely.
But moving on to our next game, we had Mario versus Furret. So Mario ran Protect on multiple Pokemon this week. So he's up to 3 Protects on the season, which is all this week, I believe. But it was a pretty interesting set. As soon as I saw the Throat Spray with the Frisk, I assumed it was a Snarl set. And Snarl Throat Spray is something on Spectra I don't think gets enough play, because a bulky Spectrier with Snarl just has a lot of staying power, especially into a special heavy team. And then if you get it up to a +1 with that throat spray with the snarl, the shadow ball is just going to be doing insane damage, especially if you get a Grim boost afterwards. So I thought the tech was very cool on that Spectrier, but it ended up not mattering as much because Furret was really able to bulk out the game. I thought game 2, from his perspective, was especially impressive because he just took so little damage throughout the course of that game. His defensive switching was on point, and he was able to just outlast a lot of what Mario was trying to do with the cool text, with the word ear, with the Spectrier, with the redirection. He was just able to sort of outbulk it and power through it at the end. And that Terra Steel Noivern defensively worked really well, and being able to always connect with that air slash to finish off the games was really key for him. Furret in game 2 did have a pretty good snarl dodge, and I think his RNG in general was pretty good this set, but overall I just think the way that he built his team with the bulk and the way that he was able to position defensively just put him in such a commanding position throughout most of this set. And it felt like Mario at times was trying to call certain Terras that didn't happen, and making plays that were suboptimal trying to call a Terra. And that's sort of a trend I also noticed this week, is there were a lot of times where people were trying to call Terras, and then the opponent would call that they would call the Terra and not Terra, and it was a pretty weird rock paper scissors that happened throughout the week. But do you have any additional thoughts on this set?
Yeah, I think the weird ear is cool. I really like the skill swap to like skill swap intimidate, and then like adding that synergy alongside of the Caparaja, which has holding the clear amulet set, doesn't get intimidated by whatever gets skill swapped or by the Hitmontop. But I think in general, the Weird Ear, funny enough, kind of got shut down by Heatran, because the Heatran holding the AV was bulky enough to be able to like easily take Earth Power on the chin, which was really impressive. So I think in general, Heatran was kind of a really important piece for Furret this week, and ended up proving why it's one of the GOATs.
Yeah, Heatran was great, and I think the best answer to Heatran, besides the Spectrier, would have actually been to skill swap away that Flash Fire like you did, but to then be able to overheat it with the Magmortar after you force the Terra. But that's a lot of things to get right for the Heatran, because I don't think the Scald Melodic was doing quite enough. Even if it Terra's Grass and you've got Ice Beam, that's just not going to be doing enough damage into this Heatran, and it's just able to stick on the field so well this set.
Yeah, agreed.
But up next, we've got Batista versus Otto, and for my money, Batista's had the most impressive first 2 weeks so far this season. But what are your thoughts on this match?
Yeah, so first off, from Otto's end, he is completely foregoing any Meowstic support in favor of the Choice Band to pair with the Booster Energy Roaring Moon on that Floette. And then we never got to see the Poltegeist, but interesting that he brought it to the matchup. In general, we just saw Otto bring all 4 of his good mons. He brought his Fantasy Core and then his Watergrass mon every game. And we see some cool techs like Gravity on the Gardevoir is pretty cool, considering that Batista has a fair bit of Levitate on his. So that's a pretty neat tech, especially when it's like, okay, we're running Earthquake on the Iron Treads to hit some of these mons. But in general, I think that Batista just got a ton of value out of his particular Cobalion set, because coaching next to Ogerpon, the Gardevoir ended up blocking Icy Wind to try to get speed drops, but the Cobalion never had its speed dropped, and so it was able to successfully get off a coaching and successfully get off a Thunder Wave, which really just set up the Ogerpon very well for the rest of the game. And then game 2, having Sash on Hydreigon was really good, because then Otto felt more value would come out of clicking D-Gleam to force a Terra or an Oko, but Hydreigon ended up living the hit, and then the Tailwind ended up just being really critical. So, I think that Batista just had really strong techs this week, and some good builds. But, Otto obviously has a very threatening team, and a lot of RNG did go Batista's way. He
Yeah,
got
definitely.
a couple of like what I consider to be pretty important crits. So, you know, just the way the game plays out. But yeah, in general, I do think that Batista's team was like very well built.
Yeah, the low kick tech actually on the Ogre Pawn was fantastic this game because I believe it's 120 power into both Iron Treads and Roaring Moon, which is
Correct.
it is that is a substantial piece of tech. Like if you tell me you can put close combat on Ogre Pawn Hearthflame into a team like this, I'd say it's pretty good, and that's even better. So I really liked that tech this week. I thought it was pretty fantastic. And like you said, the sash on the Hydreigon is not an item you really think of, especially when that Hydreigon has a little bit of bulk investment, but it really paid off this week. So I think Batista did get some good RNG, but he has had the most impressive first 2 weeks of the season, I believe, so far. But
No, for sure.
moving on to our next game, we've got you versus Tay. So in this game, a coach got a burn crit on a Scald, and then in the same set complained about never having RNG go in their favor. But beyond that, it was a pretty interesting set because there were a lot of times where Tay just didn't respect what you had in front of him, and you called him respecting it with Terras or switch outs. And I think there were 3 or 4 times where you talked about, oh, you could have killed the Annihilate there, but it just stayed in and went for a bulk up or a Rage Fist instead of making a defensive play, even without hitting the Terra button. Where I don't know if it was so much that Tay was calling you going for that or didn't know you had the specific text, but it was a very interesting chess match. This match felt pretty back and forth. I think you were in it considerably. I did have one question for you. In game 1, you were talking about the Skeledirge being the answer for the Annihilate, and I've found Skeledirge to have a really good matchup into Annihilate generally, but you didn't end up bringing it, I don't think, in either games 2 or 3. So what was your thought process for going that Skeledirge, even though it looks like into this team, outside of the Crocodile, it's got a pretty good matchup, and if you Terra it seems like even into the Crocodile, it's fine.
So yeah, in general, kind of how I approached, like I just got completely, I got completely fragged game 1. I just forgot that Bulwark was an option that Smeargle could use as protect, and so I immediately got punished for my like going for a physical attack into it, which is fine. I learned a fair bit about the Smeargle, learning that it was focus sash over covert cloak was really important. And so in game 2, I knew that Skeledirge would be good, but I didn't quite want to pivot off of my original game plan yet because I wanted to call him going for a different play on turn 1, which ended up being correct. He ended up leading Ape Smeargle again, and then I got a ton of momentum off of killing the Smeargle and was able to like survive with the Sneasler. So I was kind of in the driver's seat for the rest of that game. And so my thought process going into the game 3 was that I didn't really have great answers into Spore. And I thought, because Water Shuriken and Follow Me and Bulwark had been revealed at that point, but Smeargle's last move was never revealed throughout the set. And so I was really concerned about Spore on Smeargle, and I thought that Skeledirge, if it got like it's forced to Terra, so it's forced to Terra and slower than the Smeargle is. So like it's kind of in danger of being spored, and then like I'm forced to Terra because he's brought Crocodile every game. The Revavroom obviously has high horsepower to threaten it, so like Skeledirge looked like decent in theory, but I thought it was like kind of bait. Because I figured that it's kind of bait to get put to sleep, and then all 3 of his options have super effective damage for it. So I'm forced to Terra, and then like, do I have enough damage without my Sneasler? And so it's just like, yeah, I don't regret the way I played the game. I thought that I really played it as well as I could have for games 2 and 3. I thought I made reasonable reads. And so yeah, Tay just played it very well, and I think that maybe if I had close combated the Revavroom, then I could have like had a pretty fair chance at winning. But I had to respect Terra flying, and I don't, like I said, I don't regret making that play either. So I thought it was a well played set from both ends, and yeah, I felt like Dirge was more bait because I didn't want it to get put to sleep, but turns out he didn't even have Spore on his Smeargle, so womp womp.
Yeah, Salt. I can just see you getting tilted if he stole Cure to Vaporeon in an endgame situation. But I did
Certainly.
think I did think this set was pretty well played on both ends. Definitely, I also make a lot of calls about people going for Terras, so I will not begrudge you any of those calls. I probably would have made most of them in the same situation as well. So I do think that this was definitely a contender for set of the week. Annihilate's just so hard to beat in draft, but I thought the Casino Girl strategy was really good for you and definitely gave you a good opportunity to pick up some sneaky KOs where you wouldn't necessarily expect it.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
But moving on to our next game, we've got Emboss versus Hunter. Hey guys, remember to check your Pokemon when you gen them, because you can see we've got a Terra Water, Throat Spray, Torrent, Primarina that doesn't have a water attack because Hyper Voice is normal, and it didn't affect a Serial Edge one game.
Yeah.
So that's something that can happen. But beyond that, this game was actually really well played. Hunter sort of swindled game one a bit, you could consider, because his Serial Edge didn't get affected by Hyper Voice. But I thought he positioned the Zoroark pretty well throughout the set. The Terra Electric Tornadus being able to provide late speed control was played pretty well. And then Ursaluna's Ursaluna, so it's obviously very threatening. And then the Serial Edge being able to do over 50% to the Baxcalibur gave him some decent answers into that. But I think Emboss in game 2 and 3 was able to adjust really well with that Donphan. It really overperformed considerably with the sturdy Expert Belt set. With 4 HP EVs, I imagine it was max in attacks and speed with it being sturdy. So it was able to do some big damage with high horsepower into Terra Electric Tornadus, picking up the Oko there, and hit some other things just for so much damage. And then that Baxcalibur having Dragon Dance, being able to Dragon Dance up once and then be able to outspeed that Ursaluna under Tailwind was huge for Emboss. It really gave him a different type of outer dimension if he was able to call Protects correctly, and then that Baxcalibur Icicle Spear is able to threaten the Ursaluna. So I think both coaches played well, except for Emboss's genning ability, but I do think that Dragon Dance Baxcalibur set really put him in the driver's seat game 2 and 3 to give him a lot more control over the set. But do you have any thoughts on this set?
In general, yeah, I tend to agree. I think that Hunter kind of played his hand a little early with the Tornadus in game 3, putting himself in a position where he had already used Terra and had no room for mind games moving forward. I didn't think it was necessarily bad, but obviously when you're forced to Terra to use the coverage moves that you want to be able to hit that Corviknight with, it's a little bit of a bummer. But in general, yeah, I thought the sets were pretty good. Got good use out of Zoroark, which is always cool to see. And yeah, I thought Emboss adjusted his strategy really well after finding out that his Primarina was not usable. So
yeah,
well done.
One thing that I've found interesting throughout the season, and it's sort of been an evolution since the beginning of Scarlet Violet draft that I've been noticing, is the prevalence of the move Encore. It's definitely been increasing, and the variety of Pokemon that are using it are increasing. Normally you'd see it 2 or 3 times a season, and it would be like a Sableye or Screamtail that are using it. This week we see it out of your Comfan, then we also see it out of this Donphan having Encore. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it 2 or 3 times a week just in general, with random Pokemon having it as a 4th move, sometimes instead of Protect, because it can just put people in pins out of nowhere if we weren't expecting Encore out of certain Pokemon. What do you think about the development and overall deployment of Encore?
I think Encore is a cool move when it's not being used off of Prankster Mons. I think when Prankster Pokemon can use Encore, it becomes way less cool and it's not saucy or fun. But non-Prankster Pokemon using Encore, I think it's really cool to see that. And yeah, like a Donphan using Encore when it's set to be a damage dealer, I think is kind of crazy. But support Mons using Encore, I feel like is definitely a cool development.
Yeah, I like it as well. I went through a whole season where I ran Encore Disable Screamtail every single week, just because.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
can tell you, Encore is a solid move, and I really like seeing a lot more prevalence of it. All right, so up next we've got my match with Stranger Danger. Why don't you give us a little bit of a breakdown of this set?
sure. So yeah, this one's a little weird. I thought it was funny. Stranger got no value out of his Urshifu's item, not really, and he got very little value out of his Luxray's item at like the end of the set. So in game one, he got really screwed by the fact that his Luxray didn't have like or was like scarf locked into an option. But in general, I think you went with the same lead pretty much every game. I think you went with the same Mons pretty much every game, which was the Eggy Electivire lead with Azu and Pow in the back, which
Mm-hmm.
is pretty strong. Eggy was putting in crazy work, setting up, like just doing a bunch of damage, and then, it had to use Terra every time, but I think that's all right because you got a bunch of damage value out of the Sludge Bomb. In game two, Stranger kind of adjusted to bringing that Jugulus, and as usually happens, the coach who uses Iron Jugulus over using a Badmon like Mokidori is typically going to see better results, and that is exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Jugulus put in kind of crazy work, dealing a bunch of damage, and then it was really funny. We got to see the super negative downside of Supercell Slam, very prevalent in game two, where Dan's Electivire Supercell slammed directly into a protect from Sylveon,
Yep.
and just immediately exploded after that, which was very sad. But the tech I thought was cool because Stranger was, from his end, watching the video, he was like, "Oh, his Shin Pao is jolly. Like I didn't think it would be like jolly because his Luxray wasn't outspeeding it, and you can clearly see by the Luxray only having 4 HP EVs that it's not very bulky. It has a lot in speed, but it turns out that the Shin Pao is also just holding a choice scarf as well, which I think is quite humorous. And the aerial ace tech is really cool. Be able to hit that Urshifu for the good damage. But yeah, the game three was a little bit tragic because Supercell Slam proving why he's not that guy. Did like 60% to Iron Jugulus. Like not that, like the electric type definitely needed a stronger move than Supercell Slam.
Mm-hmm.
But the real tragic part was the Earth Power special defense drop into the Eggy A, right into a Hyper Voice crit, which I believe both of those things needed to happen in order for Eggy to go down to that with the Terra Poison. And then
Yep.
from that point on, like, Stranger was just in a much better position because you lost your Terra, you lost your speed control, and your main source of special damage in the matchup. But
Yeah.
I liked, there were a lot of texts from your end that I did like, though. I love Scarf Pow. I thought that the Rocky helmet on Electivire was really good. So, yeah. just a little bit, just a little bit of a sad RNG-ish finish.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. I definitely made the right play game three because the play for turn two, I called that turn one play to deal the damage to the Jugulus. And then I was going to call a protect on Sylveon turn two and go with a faint Sludge Bomb. Which, talking with Stranger, I believe he said that was the line that he was likely to go with if the Executor survived. So it was a little unfortunate. The Aerial Ace Pow really puts in work against Serena, Urshifu, and also the Volcarona that didn't make an appearance this week. But being locked into Aerial Ace and not being able to pick up that KO crucially in game two was huge. And then Azumarill coming so close but not quite getting it on the Sylveon. in much the same way. It felt a little bit unfortunate with RNG, but overall I thought it was a very well played set on both ends. I thought the Sylveon set worked really well for Stranger Danger. I did not realize the Luxio Scarf, going to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Because the way the speed interactions worked, I just expected to outspeed it with the Chien Pao because I knew I was Scarf. And my Scarf Chien Pao was going to be able to pick up the Iron Jugglers with an Ice Spinner. Even if it was max speed, booster speed, I would have outrun it and been able to pick it up, which was the thought process there. But that kind of lead never really materialized because of how good the Executor looked. The Executor has been a great performer all season, but it's also just had the worst luck. Like, multiple lost speed ties week 1, and then week 2 just getting special defense dropped into crit to die as the only way it can die before setting Trick Room. It was incredibly sad, but overall I think it's a really cool Pokemon, and I'm enjoying it this season, and I thought that this was a well-played set on both ends.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a mid-tier value goat right there, Eggy A. So
Yep. But moving into our match of the week, we got El Flamingo versus Pedons with a really interesting set. We've got the Terra Fighting Calm Mind Leftovers Articuno, which was EV'd incorrectly, but ended up being fine. And the Leftovers did so much healing over the course of the entire match. We've got the AV Tinkaton, and then the Specs Iron Moth, which were the important things in this set. Again, check your mons when you're genning them, because I don't think El Flamingo expected his Scrafty to have Protect instead of Fake Out. But it didn't end up punishing him too hard, as he was able to pull out the set. But from Pedon's side, I thought the build was very cool, because he went with a Trick Room focused team with the Vikavolt and the Arcaludon, but had Speed Boost Blaziken often in the lead that was special to be able to pick up certain threats on El Flamingo's team. So, yeah, I just think overall the way that they both positioned and built their sets was very cool. The Vikavolt having Discharge next to Telepathy, Covert Cloak, Oranguru just gave it so much opportunity to get multiple discharges out, and then the Galarian Articuno being able to survive multiple electric attacks, sometimes with Terra, and then you think even once he didn't Terra, ate a discharge, then was able to protect Terra and then survive something afterwards. It was just a really nice back and forth set where the amount of special damage was able to overcome the AV on the Arcaludon, and the Blaziken speed boost wasn't necessarily a good thing for it sometimes at the end of the game if Trick Room was up. But overall, I think they both played very well. Obviously, I've got this as the game of the week, and I just think this techs that they built were pretty cool, from the special Blaziken, the Articuno Galar, and then we've got another Encore Pokemon with the Ogerpon this week. But game of the week for me, but what are your thoughts on this match?
yeah, I really loved Specs Iron Moth. I thought that was really cool. Most of the time, people find themselves feeling trapped into giving this guy a speed booster, and that just isn't always the best set. So just really cool to see a little bit of set variety there. It's really funny because Flamingo clicked Acid Spray into Oranguru, I think it was in game 1, into attacking it with Articuno, like expecting it to get the kill because of the special defense drop, but had like failed to notice earlier about the Covert Cloak on the Oranguru. So if he would have just clicked like a fire move and then attacked, if he would have just like doubled up with a real attack into Oranguru with Moth and Articuno, it would have died. So that was kind of funny. But Flamingo he's a brave man for just like letting his Articuno take a ton of damage in the early game, and just kind of like going balls to the wall with it in the later game, you know, with it at like 50% health. So I thought that was really cool from Flamingo's end there. I think that this game did end up coming down to a crit as well, because in the end of game 3, I'm not sure about the damage calc. Definitely would be something to run, but I'm not so sure Specs Heat Wave is killing our Chaladon at what, like 70%, whatever it was at, without the crit. So maybe got a little lucky there. But I generally agree with your take on the Blaziken. I think it's interesting to put a speed boost mon next to your Trick Room setter and then set up Trick Room after you get a speed boost to where your speed boost mod is outspeeding everything. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. But Special Blaziken was pretty cool, even though it didn't end up doing nearly as much. Just having the special ground coverage with Scorching Sands, I think, put a ton of pressure on the Iron Moth. So overall, just some very cool sets, and I think this is definitely worthy of being match of the week.
Yeah, in the moment watching it, I do think that Heat Wave crit mattered on the Arcalodon, but I didn't think it mattered in the set because I didn't think Arcalodon would be able to do anything to it. But looking that it has Metal Burst, if he'd clicked Metal Burst that turn and didn't get crit, maybe Pedons takes game 3. Metal Burst is really cool tech. But this is also the second week in a row he's run either like Metal Burst or Mirror Code. So maybe it's getting a little expected.
Metal Burst is just the better version of Mirror Coat, though. Like, I think that's definitely the move that you run because it's just more consistent, right? You get a lot more value out of it. So, but I'm not sure what move Pedon's clicked there. If it was Metal Burst, then that would have been crazy. But yeah, this was a fun one. And yeah, make sure to check your mons. Make sure to have the moves that you want. That way you can't John about it in game. So
yep. Deppers and Joshi, make sure to play your match, please. And everyone get their pastes in. I mentioned in chat, I'll also say it in this video. This weekend, if you don't have your paste in, I'll be taking away some of your transactions for the season because everything's going to be going over to the new dock that'll have live updating standings. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've been enjoying watching and playing this season. And look forward to talking to you next week as we review week number 3. Thanks again, Chad, for joining me for this.
Yeah, sounds good. These are a lot of fun. And yeah, looking forward to doing next week's as well.
All right. See you guys around. Bye.